Our second speaker this morning is going to be Miguel Almeida. He's also from the University of Coimbra. I'll let him introduce his talk.
So I can start talking while they are changing the presentation. So my name is Miguel, and I'm from ADAI. Just a second. Sorry. Okay. So I'm from ADAI, from University of Coimbra, as well as Luís Mário, and I will talk about the harmonization of information for operational collaborative firefighting events. So this information is more the meteorological information and the fire risk information. So the outline of this presentation will be the general motivation of this work. I will talk a little bit about the Spitfire project, because this work was done under the Spitfire project, an European project, about the fire risk information indexes and the harmonization, and at least the provision of this information of the achievements. So the general motivation, actually the fires don't know the borders of the countries, and sometimes we have international fire events, and when we have international fire events, we have between the boundary between Portugal and Spain, we have forces from Portugal and forces from Spain acting in the same event. And because of that, because some fires pass from one country to the other, we have a very well-known protocol that allows the Portuguese firefighters fight the fire in Spain when they have a fire in the strip of 15 kilometers from each side of the border. So the Spanish firefighters can fight the fires in Portugal, or the Portuguese firefighters can fight the fire in Spain with no particular permission. So they are free to act in this strip of 30 kilometers. Of course, that if they are acting in the same event, they should work with the same information. And this actually currently doesn't happen. And that's why this is the general motivation of this work. And there are lots of missions. We can see here that we have in Portugal more than 1,000 in the last 5 years. We have more than 1,000 agents involved in missions, in more than 100 missions. And in Spain we have less, but we also have lots of fire events where in Spain where the Portuguese firefighters had to act. So the use of common and harmonized information is essential for the good performance of these collaborative missions. And what we have now regarding to the FWE, the Fire Weather Index, is that when we pass the border, sometimes the fire risk is completely different. And of course that this doesn't happen. So we try to harmonize in order to don't have these differences when we cross the border. And why these differences happen? Because we have different input data. For example, in Spain, they use for the predictions, the weather predictions, they have the forecast. They have the one model, the ERLAM model, and in Portugal, they use the ARO model. We also have different calibration systems and different interpretation of results. And was in these three things that we act in order to harmonize the meteorological and fire risk information. I will pass this fire weather index just to tell that is more or less everybody knows. That is composed by 3 different codes regarding to the fuel moisture, and that produce 3 fire behavior indexes. We worked in this fire weather index, the final FWI. When I was saying that we have different interpretation of the FWI values, actually in Portugal and in Spain, you use so, different scale of colors in Portugal as well, and sometimes even in regions, this is also different because Spain, as you know, have different regions with autonomy in terms of silver protection. So when we try to compute this, the FWI for the models, we have difference that we can see here. This is for the Spanish models, this is for the Portuguese models, and here we have the differences, and we can see that there are several differences that we also could see in the last slide with that map. So the FWI, of course, that is very limited. Only take into account with the meteorological data, but there are some aspects like sociology, topography, vegetation, structural aspects, full cover, that also are important to the fire risk. And so in our calibration, we try to include these parameters as well. And so for this calibration, we did this calibration in terms of course, the FWI values that are achieved directly, the number of fire occurrence, and the burnt area. And we used data from the years from 2000 to 2015 during the summer season, so from June to September. And regarding to the methodology, so the first thing was to define the study area. So as I told you, our area of interest is 15 kilometers from the border, the international border, but we use data from the 35 kilometers from each side of the border. And we try we define pairs, because in Portugal we have districts, so we have districts, and in Spain you have provinces. And so we try to find a correspondence between the Portuguese districts and the Spanish provinces. And sometimes the border match very well, but sometimes not. And so, for example, Orense, we have Orense with facing three Portuguese districts, in this case Braga, Vila Real, and Bragança. And so we create these pairs of provinces and districts. The second thing was evaluate the daily value of FWI, and we estimate, of course, the meteorological parameters. And then we, based on this FWI distribution, we sort these values in ascending order regarding to the number of fires, that is the number of fire events, and the burnt area. So we sort these values in ascending order. And our first approach was, so these are the codes of the fire risk, and we set these values with the percentile of FWI values. But what we could see that in these provinces and districts, sometimes the behavior was completely different. In Portugal, normally when we have the FWI increasing, we have the number of fires or the area burnt increasing as well. But in Spain, this is not so monotonic. And so sometimes when we have the FWI increasing, sometimes we have less fire events or less burnt area. Maybe this is because the level of alert increases as well, and so the behavior is different. And so we have to change a little bit and to propose different values of FWI. We have to harmonize and find different values of FWI here, and so for each province or for each district, Portuguese district, we found different FWI values, and so for each code. And these are the final values. What we tried to do with this was that the differences between when we cross the border, the difference of those codes here were always less than 1 and as maximum equal as possible. And so this was the initial approach. You can see that here we have lots of differences, and the final approach we have more zero values. That means that when we cross the border, we don't have differences between FWI. So this is, let's say, the harmonization of the values. And this was that figure that I showed you before, and this is before the harmonization, and here in the calibration, this is after the harmonization. So you can see that there are not so many differences as here. So when we cross the border, the fire risk is more or less the same. Sometimes it's not. So, and of course, this is important not having in terms of values, but it's also important to provide this information for the firefighters, for all the actors that are dealing with that. And so we produced this Spitfire platform. Spitfire is the project that will, and everybody that has the access is free that for the firefighters in the border of Portugal and Spain, the firefighters and the civil protection forces, and so they can enter in this platform. And very quickly I will show that. So this is the main appearance with all the region here. And then, of course, that we can detail the information for a specific local and can produce reports or directly, or can have reports that are already foreseen as being important. And that can be personalized, can be customized for the actor, for the user. Here is for the IRLAM model, so for the Spanish model, here is for the Portuguese model, and here is for the harmonized information, the Spitfire, let's say, information. We also include in this Spitfire platform, we also include fire behavior simulator, only to support the decision. And we also produce this application for the tablets or for the smartphones. The information provided from this application is very, let's say, limited, but it can give to the actor the forecast, the weather forecast in terms of wind, whatever, temperature, humidity, and of course also the fire parameters that are expected, the fire risk parameters. If we only have the platform and the application, of course that people, it's difficult to start dealing with that, and so because of that, we had this preliminary workshop, training session with potential end users, and we also have the final workshop of the project. And next week, so between 7th and 17th February, we will have regional workshops, 7 workshops in order to teach how people can use this platform around, of course, the boundary that is our area of interest with Portuguese and Spanish firefighters. And so with this presentation, I just explained you the calibration and harmonization of this information. It's important that everybody in the same fire event, even if it's international, it's dealing with the same information, and that's why this platform was produced and all this work was produced. So that's all. It's time for questions. If there are no questions.
Did you just focus on FWI, or did you look at the other indices as well and try and harmonize them?
In terms of harmonization and calibration was for the FWI, but the platform provides also the other sub-indexes and the codes.
And You don't get any winter fires in these regions that might need a different type of index?
Excuse me, could you repeat, please?
Do you get any winter fires?
We have winter fires. For example, in Portugal, this winter was very dry, and we had some winter fires. But the calibration and the harmonization was made only for summer fires, because it was simple for us, and I think it's enough as well, because the major fires occurred during the summer season. Winter fires are not so common, but sometimes happen, and the area is reduced. And thank you. So, if there is no more questions, even if you want to put your question, si quieren preguntar en español, yo puedo responder en español si hay alguna duda. Pero no. Thank you very much.